At 4:52 on March 17, 1945, the massive silhouette of B-29 Superfortress, Silver Kite 22, emerged from the pre-dawn haze east of Kyushu. Its four right are 3350 engines limping unevenly as the bomber fought to stay in formation. The aircraft trembled from wingtip to wingtip. One nacelle coughing smoke, another barely holding power. The airframe itself patched with quick repairs from the night before. Inside the cockpit, Captain Thomas Hale, 26 years old, sweat-soaked despite the cold, gripped the control yoke with both hands. His crew could feel the vibration through the floor, the shudder that meant they were flying on borrowed time. Below them, the Japanese coastline glowed with rising orange light. Above them, the thin air hummed with tension. Radio chatter crackled through the intercom. Silver Kite 22, you're falling behind. Are you holding altitude? Silver Kite 22. Your number 3 looks bad, real bad. Hale abort before that thing tears itself off the wing. But Hale ignored the calls. He had heard them since Guam. He'd heard them again after Formosa. And now, over Kyushu, they sounded like background noise to the weight on his shoulders. Because today mattered. Today, the target wasn't a factory, or dockyard, or rail yard. It was Chiren airfields, the primary staging grounds for Japan's new, feared special attack squadrons. Kamikaze pilots, the units that had devastated the U.S. fleet at Ulithi and Kure. Destroying Chiren didn't just cripple a base. It saved ships' crews, thousands of men. But the Japanese defenders spotted Hale's crippled aircraft long before he reached target altitude. Anti-aircraft gunners on the ridgeline watched the damage B-29 struggle upward, its propellers uneven, its right wing fluttering from compromised spars. They laughed. To them, Silver Kite 22 looked like the easiest kill of the morning. A wounded giant, a slow, dragging target easy to bracket with flak rounds. But they didn't know Hale. They didn't know his crew. They didn't know the modifications they'd made at sea, the calibration they'd perfected, or the single experimental payload locked in their bomb bay. A device no one in the squadron fully trusted, and few believed would even function. They simply watched the lumbering American bomber approach and shouted to one another across the gun pits. That one won't even make it to the coast. Bring the big guns. This will be an easy shot. Flak barrels swung toward the sky. Spotters red ranges. And Silver Kite 22 kept climbing. At 6:03, a brutal burst of anti-aircraft fire shredded the underside of Hale's right wing. Panels tore loose. A fuel line ruptured. The entire bomber lurched violently, dropping nearly 300 feet in a heartbeat. Inside the cockpit, Hale's navigator shouted, "Tom, we're hit bad. We can't hold this course." But Hale gritted his teeth, held the yoke steady, and forced the bomber back onto its attack line. Open bomb bay doors. The crew hesitated. The engineer nearly refused. But Hale said again, "Come. Level absolute. Open them." Steel doors yawned wide beneath the aircraft. And in that moment, through a gap in the rising smoke, the Japanese gunners finally saw what was inside. Not the standard 500-pounders, not the incendiary clusters they expected. A single heavily modified, experimental payload, one they had never seen before. A device that would turn the battle upside down. The laughter on the ground stopped instantly as the B-29 lined up for its run, bleeding fuel and trailing smoke. Japanese commanders shouted orders, scrambling to reposition their batteries and warn nearby units. Hale whispered into his mask, "Hold it together, girl, just a few more seconds." Then the bombardier called out, "I have a target," releasing in 3, 2, 1. And when Silver Kite 22 dropped its weapon, the battle at Chiren changed forever. When the bomb bay doors opened, icy wind blasted through the lower deck of Silver Kite 22, rattling loose panels and scattering fragments of insulation across the catwalk. The crew braced instinctively, every man gripping a cable, a beam, or the nearest handhold as the damaged B-29 shuddered under the strain. Bombardier Lieutenant Harris lay prone at the northern sight, his gloved fingertip hovering over the release switch. Sweat pooled inside his mask. He could feel the aircraft vibrating through the metal frame beneath him. Each tremor a reminder that one more flak burst in the wrong spot could tear the Superfortress apart. He spoke, quietly, almost reverently. Target in sight, adjusting drift. Wind shear is heavy. Through the glass dome, Harris saw Chiron's sprawling complex spreading across the plain. Long fuel depots, wooden barracks, training strips, revetments packed with aircraft. Rows of Ki, 43 Oscars and Ki, 84 Franks lined the taxiways, many already warming up. The Japanese were preparing a full-scale strike. Timing was seconds from collapsing into disaster. Above, the bombardier's whisper. The intercom crackled with the voice of Flight Engineer Staff Sergeant Dunn. "Captain, number 3 cylinder pressure dropping. We're going to lose the whole engine." In the cockpit, Hale kept his eyes locked on the horizon. "We only need 1 more minute." "Sir, we don't have a minute." The B-29 jolted violently as another flak round detonated close beneath the wing. Shrapnel tore upward through the bomb bay. Sparks sprang across the catwalk as metal fragments ricocheted off the bulkheads. Tail Gunner Corporal Jennings shouted from the rear blister. "Captain, fighters. Multiple. Coming up fast from the southwest." Hale didn't even look back. Of course fighters were coming. Chiran was the beating heart of Japan's southern air defense. Hale pressed the throttle levers forward, feeling the aircraft resist, groan, then grudgingly rise another 40 feet. Just enough to steady Harris's aim. "Lieutenant," Hale said over the intercom, "talk to me." Harris swallowed hard. Lining up drift correction, final bomb sight stabilized. A shadow swept across his dome. A formation of Oscars soared upward, 6 of them closing fast. Jennings' voice cracked. "They're forming a pincer. Hale, they're coming straight for us." The crew braced. The Oscars opened fire. Tracer ribbons streaking past the tail like glowing needles. But the fighters weren't aiming to shoot the bomber down outright. They were aiming for the bomb bay. They'd seen the device. They knew something was different. Hale growled through clenched teeth. "Hold steady." "Harris, drop it." Almost. Harris adjusted the crosshairs in microscopic increments. Every man aboard held his breath. Then, "I have it." "Pale it away." The shudder was subtle. A downward thump as the experimental weapon detached and dropped cleanly into the open sky. But what happened next was anything but subtle. The weapon didn't fall like a typical free bomb. Halfway down, its stabilizer fins snapped outward. A timed sequence activated. The casing rotated. Jennings, watching from the tail, yelled, "What the? Captain, the payload just spun. It's rotating." Hale didn't answer. He knew what was coming. On the ground, Japanese crews scrambled in panic as the device descended, its strange mid-air rotation confusing their manual predictors. Spotters shouted conflicting range calls. Some gunners hesitated, unsure what trajectory it was taking. Then the weapon completed its final rotation and arm. A split second later, the valley lit up, a white-hot shock pulse. Not a fireball, not a standard heat detonation. Erupted in a perfect expanding cone across the airfield. It wasn't designed to obliterate buildings. It was designed to collapse every aircraft engine within hundreds of yards. A prototype concussive device intended to shred crankcases, warp prop shafts, and permanently render aircraft inoperable. It worked better than anyone imagined. On the ground, more than 40 fighters convulsed as their engines seized simultaneously. Propeller blades snapping, cylinders rupturing, cowling panels bursting outward. Aircraft that had been seconds from takeoff jolted violently, many toppling onto their noses or collapsing their landing gear entirely. Within 3 seconds, the entire Chiran strike wing was crippled. Inside Silver Kite 22, the crew stared in stunned silence. Harris whispered, "To God," but the Japanese fighters already in the air had not been affected. And now they were furious. 3 Oscars broke away from formation, rolling inverted, diving hard, closing the gap on the damaged B-29. Jennings shouted, "Captain, multiple bandits inbound. We're exposed." Hale tightened his grip on the yoke. The weapon had done its job. The airfield would not be launching a counterstrike today. But getting home? That was now a different battle entirely. "All right, boys," Hale said calmly. "We've made our mark." He eased the B-29 into a slow right turn, engine straining, airframe groaning. "Now let's survive it." The moment Silver Kite 22 banked away from Chiran, the sky behind it erupted into chaos. 3 Oscars dove hard, sleek, agile, speeding toward the wounded B. 29 like hawks descending on a lumbering bear. Their engines snarled as they tightened their formation, wings flexing under acceleration. They weren't shaken by the destruction below. They were enraged by it. Inside the tail blister, Jennings fired the first defensive burst, a long, controlled rattle from the twin point 50S that stitched bright arcs across the morning sky. But the Oscars were ready. They split formation instantly, one climbing, one diving, one sliding laterally, forcing Jennings to track three completely different vectors at once. "Captain, they're doing box cuts." Jennings shouted. "I can't cover all of them." Hale didn't need to see them to know what was happening. Japanese fighter tactics had been evolving rapidly in 1945. These weren't inexperienced recruits. They were the hardened remnants of elite units, men trained to tear heavy bombers apart by hitting their weakest points. Hale called over the intercom. "Top turret. Wexler, eyes on the climber." From above, Tech Sergeant Wexler swung his turret and caught the glint of the upward Oscar. The fighter was preparing a classic vertical stabbing attack, a high-angle dive straight through the B-29 spine. Wexler fired a burst. The Oscar rolled away, not hit, but forced off timing. The second Oscar approached from below, trying to get underneath the bomber's defensive arc. Hale forced the B-29 lower, pushing the giant aircraft down toward the coastal cliffs, not to escape, but to deny the Oscar the vertical room it needed. Then came a third Oscar. Fast, accurate, patient. It slid behind the tail in a shallow pursuit curve, not firing, not closing recklessly, waiting for the B-29 to level out and offer a perfect shot. Jennings knew exactly what the pilot was doing. "Captain, that one's smart. He's pacing us." Hale lowered his voice. Not for long. The cliffs along Kyushu's shoreline rose like jagged black teeth beneath the bomber. Hale skimmed them deliberately, pulling the B-29 to within a few dozen feet of the rock face. Waves slammed into stone below them, sending white spray into the air. Inside the cockpit, Dunn shouted, "Tom, this is suicide. We don't have the engine power for low level." "We don't need power," Hale said. "We just need the Oscars to pick the wrong angle." The fighter behind them followed, hesitating only slightly. Jennings saw the opening. "Captain, bring us 5 degrees. Right. Bring him into my arc." Hale complied. Slow, steady. And Jennings unleashed a brutal burst. The Oscar jolted, hit across the right wing before its pilot rolled away. Tracer smoke curled behind it. "Not down." Jennings barked. "He's still good." Wexler cut in. Climbers coming back. High and fast. Hale could feel the sky tightening around them. Every second, the Oscars grew bolder, more coordinated. They were adjusting, learning the bomber's responses. But the B-29 had its own advantage, a crew that had flown together long enough to finish one another's sentences under fire. Harris, the bombardier, climbed back into the cockpit, face pale. "Tom, there are more fighters taking off from the auxiliary strips. They'll be on us in minutes." Hale nodded slowly. "Then we finish this before they get here." He lifted the B-29 away from the cliffs, pulling back into open air. The Oscars repositioned immediately, like sharks circling a wounded whale. Jennings' voice trembled with adrenaline. "They're lining up for a synchronized pass left, high and low. This is it. They're going for the kill shot." The sky tightened. All 3 fighters angling inward, guns lighting up with bright orange flashes. Hale whispered, "Hold steady." The airframe groaned. Sparks sprayed from the right wing as cannon shells tore through the skin. Wexler's turret roared. Jennings fired until the barrels glowed. The climber dove, the gunner's tracers chasing it, until finally a direct hit smashed through its engine cowling. The Oscar exploded into a spinning fireball. One down. The low attacker surged upward, trying to strike the bomber's belly turret. Dunn shouted warnings as rounds punched through the fuselage. Hale rolled left, barely, forcing the Oscar to tighten its climb. Jennings snapped the tail guns into its path and fired, the fighter's prop disintegrating as half its nose sheared off. 2 down. The third Oscar didn't flee. It didn't hesitate. It committed. It streaked straight at the bomber's cockpit, guns blazing, tracers hammering against the nose glass. Harris dove out of the bombardier's chair. Wexler screamed. Tom, he's aiming for you. Hale didn't flinch. He rolled into the attack. The Oscar overshot by inches. So close Hale saw the pilot's scarf flutter in the slipstream as the fighter pulled upward to regain energy. Jennings fired the cleanest burst of his life. The Oscar's tail snapped off. It cartwheeled into the sea. 3 down. The radio crackled suddenly. Silver Kite 22, this is Guardian lead. 2 P-51s inbound to cover your withdrawal. Hale finally let his breath slip out. They weren't safe. Not yet. But they were no longer alone. He keyed the intercom. Crew, you did it. Prepare for climb out. We're going home. But as he pulled the B-29 toward open ocean, a violent bang shook the fuselage. Dunn yelled, Tom, fuel pressure on number 2 just dropped. We're losing her. Hale steadied the controls. They weren't out of danger. Not even close. A metallic bang echoed through the cockpit. Deep, ugly, unmistakable. The kind of sound every B-29 pilot feared. The needles on the engine panel flickered violently. Flight engineer Dunn swore under his breath. Number 2's dropping fast. Oil pressure's gone. Temp rising like a rocket. Before Hale could respond, the entire nacelle shuddered. A burst of flame spat backward along the wing, momentarily lighting the cockpit in flickering orange. Harris yelled, engine fire, starboard side. Hale didn't panic, didn't freeze, didn't even raise his voice. Feather number 2. Dunn slammed the switch, but the prop barely moved. Feather systems, sluggish. Captain, lines might have taken a hit. She's not locking. Then we do it manually, Hale said. Dunn grabbed the emergency lever beside his seat and pulled. Hard enough to strain his shoulder. The prop slowly jerked to a stop. The flames diminished. But number 2 was dead. The B-29 lurched right, yawing dangerously toward the sea. Hale kicked rudder, adjusting trim. Hold her, come on, girl. The bomber stabilized. Barely. Wexler called down from the top turret. Tom, those P-51s are closing fast, 2 minutes out. Jennings added. And there's another 3-plane element of Oscars trying to reach us from inland. But they're low angle. Looks like they're struggling to gain altitude. Hale almost smiled. The experimental payload had devastated far more than just a parked aircraft. It had damaged engines still warming on the ground. Those fighters were climbing on dying power. But Silver Kite 22 wasn't much healthier. Dunn worked frantically at the panel. Captain, we're flying on 3 half-wounded engines. Number 1's shaking. Number 3's coughing. Number 4's the only one actually behaving. Hale replied evenly. It only takes one to get home. Harris slid back into the cockpit, breathing hard. Tom, do we even have altitude to spare? Hale checked the altimeter. They were low, too low. Barely 1,600 feet over the sea. Wexler cut in. Tom, the Oscars, 2 of them, are breaking off to intercept the Mustangs. That bought the B-29 time, but not enough. Jennings suddenly shouted. 1 Oscar heading right for U.S., 10 o'clock high. Hale didn't hesitate. Dunn, give me everything we have left in 1, 3, and 4. Dunn shoved the throttles forward. The bomber groaned, metal creaking, turbochargers whining like wounded animals. The B-29 clawed upward, an anemic trembling ascent. The Oscar dove straight at them, cannons flashing. Wexler opened up with a full turret burst, tracers ripping across the sky. He missed. The Oscar passed directly over the cockpit. So low Hale felt the slipstream slap the canopy. Harris ducked instinctively. The Japanese fighter didn't loop around. It climbed, setting up for a second attack. Jennings shouted. He's doing a hammerhead turn. He's coming back down on U.S. Hale saw it. A perfect vertical pivot. A disciplined stall turn. The Oscar rolled, inverted, and dove again, lining up squarely with the cockpit. Hale whispered, "You want me?" He yanked the yoke left, rolling the bomber into a banking descent so sudden the crew lurched sideways in their harnesses. The Oscar pilot corrected, still locked onto them, closing fast. Jennings fired another burst. The tracers passing behind the fighter. Too far, too fast. The Oscar was seconds from firing into the nose. Hale tightened his grip, lowering the nose even further, toward the ocean. Jennings realized what he was doing and screamed. "Tom, no, not this low. Spray blasted across the windows as the bomber skimmed the waves, barely 5 feet above the surface. Hale's eyes narrowed. "Try shooting me now." The Oscar followed, but hesitated. The pilot flinched at the height. He lifted his nose half a degree. Half a degree. It was enough. The instant the fighter lost alignment, Wexler raked it with a perfect crossing burst from the top turret. The Oscar's left wing tore free. The fighter spun downward, striking the water in an explosion of white spray. Jennings exhaled. "One more down." Wexler corrected him. "That's not the good news, boys." He pointed upward. 2 P-51s streaked toward them, silver wings glinting bright against the morning sky. "Escorts here." The Mustangs dove past Silver Kite 22, afterburner trails ripping through the air as they chased the struggling Oscars climbing inland. For the first time since the bomb run, Hale allowed himself a breath of relief, but only one, because Dunn's voice came through, strained, urgent. "Captain, number 1 just dropped pressure. We're losing her too." Hale clenched his jaw. 2 engines gone, a third failing, fuel leaking, altitude minimal, fighters still in the area. He looked at the coastline shrinking behind them. They were not out of danger, not even close, and ahead lay hundreds of miles of open water. "Crew," Hale said, voice steady as steel, "brace. We're not done yet." The moment Dunn announced that Engine 1 was dying, a heavy, electric silence settled inside Silver Kite 22. Not fear, not panic, a silence of realization. They were limping home on 2 crippled engines, with a third coughing itself toward failure. The bomber's once steady drone now sounded like a wounded animal dragging itself across the sky. Beneath them, whitecaps rolled across the open Pacific. Ahead of them, nothing but cold, empty distance. Hale gripped the yoke tighter. "All stations, listen up. If number 1 quits completely, we'll start dropping altitude fast. Be ready to shift weight aft." Jennings replied from the tail. "Captain, we're already at minimum safe altitude." "Then we'll make unsafe work," Hale answered. The P-51 escorts swung into formation, 1 on each wing, their pilots scanning the sky for stragglers. "Silver Kite 22, this is Mustang 2. You boys look rough." Hale cracked a thin smile. "You should see the other side." But even as he said it, the Mustang pilot's tone shifted. "Be advised, long-range radar shows multiple contacts rising out of Kagoshima. We might have more company coming." The crew tensed. Harris rubbed his temples. Wexler muttered a curse under his breath. Hale remained still, calm, anchored. "Done," he said quietly. "Give me the honest numbers." The engineer swallowed. "Captain, if 1 dies, 3 can't take the load. 4 can't lift us on her own. At best, we stay airborne 15 minutes. Harris asked the question no one wanted to ask. "Is that enough to reach rescue range?" Dunn didn't answer. He didn't have to. Hale looked out across the endless water. "All right, then we buy time. Every second we can..." The P-51 escort chimed in again. "Silver Kite, if you can climb 50 feet, we can slip under you and check your underside for damage." Hale forced the bomber upward. The controls resisted. Heavy, sluggish. The carrier decks of the Pacific Fleet felt a universe away. The Mustang slid beneath the B-29, close enough that Hale could see the pilot in one Mustang look upward through his canopy, scanning the belly of the bomber. "Silver Kite, Mustang 2. Your bomb bay doors are warped from the flak hit." Harris flinched. "If those doors don't close properly," he whispered, "they'll drag us into the ocean." The Mustang pilot continued. "Looks like the locking mechanism is jammed open." Hale responded immediately. "Don Harris, manual lock override." "But Captain," Harris began. Now, they moved. Harris crawled back down the narrow catwalk, gripping handrails as the bomber lurched in turbulence. The bomb bay doors below him yawned open, still trembling from the airflow. The Pacific stared back up at him, impossibly blue, impossibly close. "Don, I'm in position, engaging manual cams." He turned the crank. Nothing. He strained harder, muscles shaking, teeth clenched, metal screaming from stress. Still nothing. The bomber dipped suddenly, falling 20 feet in a heartbeat, and a blast of air nearly ripped Harris from the catwalk. "Hold her steady." Harris screamed. Hale forced the yoke forward, sweat dripping from his brow. Jennings shouted from the tail, "Tom, altitude is evaporating." Dunn's voice cracked. "Captain, number one is done. She's gone." The dead engine's prop began to windmill, creating deadly drag. Hale didn't hesitate. "Feather one." Dunn pulled the emergency lever. The prop shuddered, slowly, stopped. The bomber lurched upward slightly from reduced drag. But it wasn't enough. "Harris," Hale shouted, "talk to me." The bombardier braced himself and heaved the manual crank with everything he had left. And suddenly the left bomb door jerked. One locked. Harris yelled, "Working on the right." He cranked again. Metal popped. The bomber groaned. The door fought him every inch. A weak creak echoed through the bomb bay. Right door locked. Harris collapsed on the catwalk, gasping. Inside the cockpit, Dunn checked the gauges. "Captain, that bought us altitude. We might just..." He stopped. A soft, rhythmic ticking echoed through the floorboards. Hale's stomach dropped. "That's not good," he muttered. Wexler noticed it too. "Captain, that's number 3. She's knocking hard." Jennings added, "It's coming apart, Tom. I can hear the crankshaft from all the way back here." Hale looked at the gauges, at the sinking needles, at the sputtering touch readings. He whispered to himself, "Not yet. Not now. You hold for me." The bomber vibrated harder. The sky darkened. The P-51s stayed at their sides like loyal wolves circling a wounded bull. "Silver Kite," Mustang 2 called out, "you are minutes from losing altitude control. Recommend ditch prep." Harris crawled back into the cockpit, exhausted. "We're ditching?" he asked weakly. Hale shook his head. "Not if I can help it." Number 3 sputtered, coughed, and went silent. A dead weight on the right wing. The plane dipped. Hale fought it, muscles straining, arms trembling. Altitude, 1,200 feet. Then 1,150. 1,100. The Pacific reached up toward them like an open grave. The crew waited, breath held, eyes locked on Hale. And Captain Thomas Hale, flying a B-29 held together by prayer, sweat, and refusal to quit, whispered, "We don't die today." He shoved the rudder, trimmed the ailerons, and coaxed every ounce of lift from the warped wings. Altitude dropped again. 1,050, 1,020, 1,000 feet. Then, miraculously, stopped dropping. Dunn stared at the gauges in disbelief. "Tom, she's riding on a single engine. A single engine. This shouldn't be possible." Hale smiled, exhausted, strained, but defiant. "Tell that to her." Silver Kite 22, broken and bleeding, held steady over the Pacific, refusing to fall. But they were still hundreds of miles from friendly waters, and the sun was beginning to set. The sun sagged toward the horizon, bleeding orange light across the Pacific as Silver Kite 22 crawled westward on a single trembling engine. Every minute, the surviving right R-3350 groaned under the strain, vibrations traveling the full length of the fuselage like an unsteady heartbeat. Inside the cockpit, the temperature dropped sharply. Frost formed on the inside edges of the windscreen. The bomber was losing heat, power, and altitude inch by inch. Dunn leaned over the engineer's panel, his voice thin and tight. "Captain, at this rate, we're not reaching Iwo. Not even close." Harris looked down at the chart table. Near safe landing is the USS Bunker Hill, somewhere east of Okinawa, if they haven't moved. "But Tom, that's carrier deck distance. This thing doesn't land on a carrier." Hale didn't answer. He stared ahead into the dying light, as though trying to will an answer out of the horizon. Jennings called from the tail, "Captain, you're going to want to hear this." One of the Mustangs peeled away. He's calling something in on long range. Hale switched to escort frequency. "Mustang 2. This is Silver Kite 22. Status." Static. Then, "Silver Kite. I've got a fix on a friendly group. You're heading toward Task Force 58. They're aware of your condition." Hale exhaled just once. Jennings added, "Sir, multiple ships, cruisers, carriers." Dunn snapped upright. "Tom, you're telling me we might actually have a prayer here?" Hale finally allowed himself a thin smile. "A prayer's all we've been flying on." But the moment of relief vanished as the bomber lurched downward. Suddenly, violently, Harris grabbed the dashboard to steady himself. What was that? Dunn checked the gauges, face draining a color. Captain, number 4 just lost 200 revolutions per minute in a single drop. Hale's blood ran cold. The last engine. Jennings shouted from the tail. Tom, the prop wash feels weird. Uneven. Like she's coughing. Altitude, 950 feet. 900. 875. The ocean glistened beneath them. Too close, too dark. Hale steadied his voice. Dunn, can we coax more power? Negative, Captain. She's at emergency limits. Any more, and she'll shear the crankshaft. Wexler's voice cut in from the top turret. Strained, trembling. Captain, what's our plan if we ditch? At this speed, we'll break up on the water. Harris tried to speak, but couldn't. His voice cracked. Jennings filled the silence. We might not survive ditching at all. The truth hung heavy in the cabin. Then the radio crackled. Clearer than ever before. Silver Kite 22. This is USS Bunker Hill. We have you on scope. Repeat, we have you on scope. The crew froze. The voice continued. You are too heavy and too large to land aboard. We are preparing an emergency recovery corridor for ditch support. Destroyers are moving into rescue formation. Dunn muttered, they're setting a lane for us. A death lane. Hale replied quietly, no, a last chance lane. Harris leaned toward him. Tom, A.B. 29 ditching at night? With no power? The odds. Don't quote odds to me, Hale said softly. Just get ready. The Mustangs rejoined. Their silhouettes hovered just off the wingtips. Silent guardians guiding the wounded giant home. Suddenly, the surviving engine sputtered again. A violent, rattling cough. Altitude, 830 feet. Dunn's voice shook. Captain, you need to make a decision. Either we climb what we can and ditch under control, or we wait until the engine dies and fall out of the sky. Hale looked at the altimeter, the compass, the dim glow ahead that might have been sunset, or might have been fleet position lights. He made his choice. Crew, prepare for controlled ditching. Secure all loose gear. Harris, get the nose compartment tied down. Jennings, brace for tail impact. Dunn, kill all unnecessary electrics and keep that engine alive for as long as it'll breathe. No one argued. They moved fast, calm, precise, professional. The sea grew darker, closer, hungrier. Then the radio blared. Silver Kite 22, this is Bunker Hill. Flares deployed. Rescue destroyers in position. Hold your heading and descend to 500 feet. Hale answered with absolute clarity. Roger, Bunker Hill. Beginning final glide. The bomber descended, groaning, metal shaking with every foot lost. Altitude, 600 feet, 575, 550. Flares burned on the horizon. Bright orange lines marking the rescue lane. Jennings whispered from the tail. Tom, we're really doing this, aren't we? We are, Hale said, and we're doing it together. The engine coughed again, a deep wrenching sound, and the bomber lurched downward. Altitude, 520 feet, 510, 505. The crew braced. Hale pulled gently back on the yoke, fighting the bomber's weight, trying to ride the last breath of lift. Then Dunn screamed. Tom, engine 4 just seized. The propeller froze. The bomber dropped like a stone. Altitude, 500 feet, 480, 450. The ocean surged toward them. Hale shouted, brace for impact. But before the bomber hit, a massive shadow rose from the waves ahead, a destroyer, cutting across their path, deploying a breaking wake, a cushion of rising spray, a shock-absorbing wall of water, a last-second intervention. Hale hauled the yoke one last time, and Silver Kite 22 slammed into the surface with a bone-rattling crash, skipping once, twisting sideways, tearing itself open, but staying afloat. For now, Silver Kite 22 hit the Pacific like a freight train colliding with a steel wall. The bomber's nose smashed into the rising wake thrown by the destroyer, water exploding upward in a blinding white curtain. The entire fuselage buckled, metal shrieking like an animal in pain, before the aircraft skipped once, slammed down again, and finally carved a violent trench into the sea. Inside, chaos erupted. Jennings in the tail was thrown forward, his harness straining as equipment tore loose around him. Harris slammed into the bulkhead, stars flashing across his vision. Dunn held the engineer's panel with both hands as gauges shattered like glass spiders. Hale stayed conscious only by sheer force of will. The impact whipped his head forward, then back, but his grip never left the yoke. Water surged through the lower compartments immediately. Breach in the bomb bay. Harris shouted, "She's filling fast." The bomber groaned, twisted, and finally settled into the swell. Nose low, tail higher. Cockpit half submerged in freezing spray. Outside, searchlights from the destroyer stabbed across the waves, sweeping for survivors and for the massive, dying hulk of the B-29. The intercom crackled barely. Tom tail section holding for now. Jennings' voice was weak, but water's coming in fast. Dunn checked the structural panel. What remained intact? "Captain, she'll stay afloat, maybe 5 minutes if we're lucky." More water surged in. "Scratch that, 4 minutes." Hale loosened his harness and roared, "Everyone out. Move, move, move." The bomber's crew sprang into coordinated motion, each man knowing exactly what to grab, where to go, how to brace for the next surge. Harris crawled toward the forward hatch, pushing aside debris. Wexler dropped from the top turret, landing hard on the catwalk. Dunn dragged an injured radio operator toward the escape panel. Jennings called from the rear, "Tail's going under. I'm wading in water up to my damn chest." "Hang on, Jennings." Hale shouted back, "I'm coming." He splashed into the rising water and shoved through the narrowing fuselage, reaching the tail blister as a wave punched through the torn aluminum skin. Jennings was barely visible, half submerged, tangled in ruptured cables. Hale braced himself, grabbed the man under the arms, and heaved. Jennings gasped, coughing seawater. "You're an idiot, Tom." "So you've told me," Hale replied. They staggered forward as the bomber groaned again. Deep, low, a death rattle. "Captain," Dunn yelled, "she's rolling. Starboard roll." The bomber began to tilt sideways, slowly at first, then more sharply. "Go. Out now." The crew burst through the forward hatch just as a massive swell rolled over the cockpit, shattering what remained of the nose glass. The destroyer's spotlights lit the scene, crewmen leaping from the sinking aircraft into the roiling water. Ropes were thrown, life nets deployed. A whaleboat hit the water with a splash. Hale pushed Jennings ahead of him. "Grab a line. Go." Jennings obeyed. But as Hale reached for the rope, Silver Kite 22 lurched violently beneath him, its final descent beginning. The wing dipped under the waves. The tail rose once, as if taking a last breath. The bomber buckled, groaned, and began to sink. Jennings screamed, "Tom, take my hand." Hale reached almost. A wave slammed between them. Hale vanished beneath the surface. The water swallowed him whole. A heartbeat. 2, 3. Jennings shouted incoherently, fighting the Mustang pilot, holding him back. The destroyer's crew swept the floodlit surface, desperate for movement. Then, a break in the water, a gasp, an arm. Hale surfaced, barely, choking, kicking wildly as the bomber's vortex tried to drag him under. For a moment, he disappeared again, pulled by the sinking fuselage, and the crew held their breath. Then a hand shot upward through the foam. Wexler dove from the whaleboat, rope tied to his waist, swimming hard. He grabbed Hale under the shoulder, hauling him clear of the swirling debris. "You're not dying today," Wexler bellowed. Hale coughed, gasping for air. "Is the crew okay?" "All accounted for," Wexler shouted. "We've got everyone." Destroyer sailors hauled them aboard the whaleboat. Moments later, Hale collapsed onto the deck, breathing, conscious, alive, just as Silver Kite 22 slipped beneath the waves, disappearing gently into the dark ocean like a wounded titan going to rest. The destroyer's captain arrived, coat whipping in the wind. "You men are the luckiest damn air crew I've ever laid eyes on," he said. Jennings, shaking, replied, "Sir, luck had nothing to do with it." Hale looked back at the ocean, quiet now, still, indifferent, where the giant bomber had vanished. His voice was barely a whisper. "She got us home." As the destroyer turned toward the fleet, rescue lights fading behind them, the crew sat wrapped in blankets, silent, exhausted, alive. Every one of them knew they had witnessed something that shouldn't have been possible. A crippled bee. 29 had flown farther, survived longer, and fought harder than any machine had the right to. And it had dropped a payload that changed the course of the battle at Chiren forever. Dawn broke gently over the Pacific the next morning. Golden light washing across the deck of the USS Bunker Hill as survivors of Silver Kite 22 gathered along the starboard rail. Their uniforms were still damp. Their bodies were wrapped in wool blankets. Their faces showed exhaustion so deep it seemed carved into bone. But they were alive, and that was something no one on board took for granted. Captain Thomas Hale stood among his crew, one arm in a sling, bruises blooming across his ribs. The ship's medical officer wanted him resting. Hale refused. He wanted to be standing when the official message came in from Fleet Headquarters. Just before 9 o'clock, it arrived. A radio man approached with a clipped salute. "Captain Hale, sir. Transmission from Commander, Strategic Air Forces, Pacific." Hale unfolded the message slowly. His eyes scanned the lines in silence. Then he exhaled. The message was simple, direct, and final. Chiron airfields destroyed. Primary kamikaze operations severely crippled. No counterstrike launched. B-29 Silver Kite 22-foot S actions instrumental to total mission success. Around him, his crew exchanged stunned looks. Harris whispered, "That means we stopped an entire wave?" Dunn nodded, voice tight with emotion. "It means every ship in the strike lane, every destroyer, every carrier that was supposed to be hit today." Jennings added softly, "And they weren't, because of us." But Hale shook his head. "No," he said, "because of her." He nodded toward the ocean, toward the place where Silver Kite 22 now rested on the seafloor. The men fell into quiet reflection. No bragging, no victory cries, just a silent acknowledgement of what had been asked and what had been given. Legacy. In the days that followed, analysts and engineers pored over reports about the mission. The oscillating engine temperatures, the unfeathered prop drag, the single-engine glide, and above all, the performance of the experimental payload. The Chiren blast became one of the most unusual and decisive airfield denial results of the entire Pacific campaign. It changed how future bomber groups approached hardened targets. It accelerated testing of advanced concussive airfield weapons. It saved thousands of American sailors who would have faced the next wave of kamikaze strikes. But for Hale and his crew, the impact was more personal. They received the Silver Star, along with a unit citation that simply read, "For extraordinary courage under impossible conditions." After the war, Hale rarely spoke about that day. When he did, he made sure the credit went to his crew and to the battered B-29 that defied physics long enough to get them home. He spent his later years quietly, raising a family, working as a civil engineer, teaching young pilots that an aircraft was more than metal and bolts. It was trust. It was responsibility. It was a promise. And somewhere deep inside him, Hale carried the memory of a bomber too damaged to fly, but refusing to quit. If this story moved you, do me a favor and hit that like button so more people can discover these forgotten acts of courage. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether anyone in your family served during the war. And if you want more cinematic, long-form stories of real wartime heroism, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. ****.